Alright, for this video we're going to talk about plant growth processes, and we're going to discover many of the plant functions and how plants grow and survive. So we're going to start with the number one function of plants, and that is photosynthesis. Photo, in that word at the top of the screen, means light, and synthesis means the processing of. So it involves processing light in order for plants to make food. So the definition for photosynthesis is the food manufacturing process in plants that combines carbon dioxide and water in the presence of light to make sugar and oxygen. So as you see in your middle of the screen right here, it is the chemical equation for photosynthesis. This first part means 6 molecules of CO2, which is carbon dioxide, plus 6 molecules of H2O, which is water, and that yields C6H12O6, and that is glucose, or the plant's food in the form of sugar, plus 6O2, which is 6 molecules of oxygen. And you can see that breakdown right here at the bottom of the screen. So as long as you know that carbon dioxide and water and light will yield glucose and oxygen through the process of photosynthesis in plants. And photosynthesis is one of those processes in plants that happens in the leaves, in the chloroplast of the cells. The main product of photosynthesis is sugar in the form of glucose. The byproduct, a secondary product of photosynthesis, is oxygen. As you can see right here, how the sunlight affects the plants and how those different molecules are formed in the plant. If you focus back here on the equation of photosynthesis, you will see right here that glucose, C6H12O6, is the main product. That is the food used for the plant. And then the oxygen is the byproduct on the second half of this equation. Respiration. Just like you and I respirate, we breathe, plant cells also need to respirate. So respiration is the process through which plant leaves, stems, and roots consume oxygen and give off carbon dioxide. So many of you guys will recognize this as the reverse of the photosynthesis formula. So it uses glucose, C6H12O6, as you can see in the middle of the screen, and also it uses oxygen in order to make carbon dioxide, water, and ATP, which is the energy. So plants produce, or they should produce, much more oxygen through photosynthesis than they use through respiration. If plants produce less oxygen through photosynthesis than they use in respiration, then that plant cannot live a healthy life and it will die. So make sure you know that in order for plants to grow, they must produce more than they consume. They produce through photosynthesis, they consume through respiration. And respiration is a process where plants cool off, and is most of the time going to happen at night in order for plants to cool off, and so they can be healthy and able to photosynthesize during the sun and through the day. Absorption. Absorption is a process that takes place in the roots, and those roots take up, or they absorb, water and air. And you can see in this image right here how the root cap and the root hairs are responsible for this process. Transpiration. Transpiration is just like the process of evaporation, except plants lose water through their leaves through evaporation. So instead of water evaporating from the ground, it's evaporating out of the plant through the leaves of the plant. This happens through the stomata, and the guard cells are responsible for opening and closing those stomata in order to regulate the plant's water loss. So if a plant loses too much water, it's going to wilt. So we're going to want plants to stay turgid or full of water. This also occurs in the stems of plants. And as you can see in this image right here, if we were to tie a bag around a plant, you will see water collection in that bag because the sun is drawing water out of the leaves of that plant. Translocation. Translocation is the movement of food and nutrients throughout a plant from one part to another. So if a plant may want to move the glucose it produces through photosynthesis down throughout the rest of the plant so that it can grow, or it may want to move nutrients and water from the roots after it absorbs it up to the leaves so the leaves can stay turgid. And so translocation is how plants move water and nutrients throughout the plant, and this occurs in the internal structure xylem and phloem. Phloem being responsible for moving water and food down through the plant, and then xylem being responsible for moving water and nutrients up through the plant. Reproduction. Reproduction increases a plant's numbers, usually by seed. It can also happen two different ways, through asexual and sexual propagation. We will discover asexual and sexual propagation a little later in a later video, but know that reproduction in plants can happen asexually, without sex, or sexually. And so reproduction by seed is a sexual propagation method, and that is the purpose of plants. Plants are their end goal is to reproduce so that they can perpetuate and they can sustain their numbers and survive. Osmosis. So osmosis is the movement of minerals and water through cell walls. And so a plant is going to need to absorb water through the roots and also minerals, and this happens through osmosis. If you notice in the image on the right here, if there's a lower concentration of water on one side of the cell wall, this black line in the middle, and there's a higher concentration on the other side, then that water is going to, through the process of osmosis, move through that cell wall in order so there's an equilibrium or an equal balanced amount of water on both sides. And this is how plants absorb water and nutrients through the soil into the plant. Photoperiodism. Photoperiodism, if you break down that word, is the response of light in relationship to time. So photo meaning light, periodism referring to the time aspect. So it is a response of plants to different amounts of light regarding their flowering and reproduction cycles. So different plants, not all plants, but many plants will flower depending on how long the days are or how short the days are, and they respond differently to light. For example, short day plants, they require long nights to flower. So if you think of short day plants, these plants are going to start flowering in the early spring or in the late fall when the daylight starts getting shorter. So the days get shorter. Notice it starts getting darker around 5:30, and it gets light or later in the morning. So it's darker for a long period of time. And so an example of a short day plant, they're going to flower when these days get shorter. That would be a poinsettia and azalea. Long day plants will require short nights to flower. So long days will happen throughout the summer months. June has the longest days of the year. The sun is in the air the longest time, and the nights are the shortest. These plants, like African violets and spinach, will respond or flower during those times. Phototrophism. It is the tendency for plants to grow towards a light source. As you can see in this jar right here, you have many plants, and the window sunlight is most likely on this left side over here. Therefore, these plants are stretching towards that sunlight in order to reach that light, because, as you know, plants want to photosynthesize and they need light. Therefore, they're trying to get to that sunlight. Moisture. 90% of plant tissue is made of moisture, and the reason this is because water is responsible for carrying nutrients throughout a plant. And so know that plant tissue is mostly made of moisture. So if you were to dry out a plant, it's going to not weigh very much. Most of that plant's weight is because of the moisture content or water content it has. And that water is very important for allowing that plant to live. So stages of growth. There are three main stages of growth. It is the juvenile referring to young. So it's when plants first start to grow from seed. You see the seeds right here and the image down here, and then you have the seed starting to grow, a young plant. And then you have reproductive. It's when plants produce flowers, seeds, and fruits. And so those cotyledons will fall off and the true leaves will emerge. And then the plant will start to grow, as you see right here. And it's going to produce flowers, seeds, and fruit. Therefore, it's reproductive. And then as it fruits and flowers, it's going to produce new seeds and that will reproduce that plant. And then the last stage of growth is dormant. That's when the plant will rest or grow very little. This is the case in order for it to store up food, and this usually happens in extreme weather conditions, whether it gets too hot or too cold. You're going to see many of the deciduous plants lose all their leaves and go dormant. hardiness zones. So one of the last concepts we're going to talk about in this video is hardiness zones. Plants are categorized by zones based on the average minimum temperature in that area. So each plant is assigned a hardiness zone. So as you will see on the next slide, you're going to see a hardiness zone map. And as you go throughout the United States, in the upper United States, in like Maine and the colder areas, it's going to start at a zone 1. So it's the average temperature in that zone is the coldest. And then as you go down to a zone 14, and you're going to see a zone in Florida and Puerto Rico, it's going to be red, and that's the average minimum temperature is extremely high. It's up in the 60s and 70s. So it will never get below 60 or 70 in that area. And so this will tell you where plants can live. All plants can only survive at but so high and even so low of a temperature. So you want to make sure when you buy a plant, you're planting it in the correct hardiness zone. North Carolina is a zone 6 through 8. Charlotte, which is in North Carolina, the southern region of North Carolina, is a zone 7. So let's take a look at that hardiness zone map so you can understand this. So as you see on this map, and as you see also in your paper, you should be able to identify these different zones. In the top right here, you have a zone 1A. It's all the way up here. It's showing you right here on the left side of the key over here, the average minimum temperature. So in the winter season, it's going to be -60 to -55 degrees. Plants that live down here in a 12, in a 55 to 60 degree average minimum temperature, like you see right here in Puerto Rico, can never survive in a zone 1. It's not possible. That plant that is used to living at 70 degrees cannot survive at -60 degrees. So right here in North Carolina, in Raleigh, North Carolina, we're a 7B. And so if you notice that over here on the chart, a 7B is rated at 5 to 10 degrees. That is the average minimum temperature it will get in North Carolina. And so therefore, we cannot take a plant from Georgia down here, and then that is rated for a zone 9, for an average minimum temperature of 20 to 25 degrees, and expect that plant to survive one of our winters where it's going to get 0 or even 5 degrees. And so we have to be very mindful of where we plant plants if we want them to survive. And so that's all I got for you guys today. Hopefully you guys enjoyed this, and hopefully you learned a lot about how plants function and how they survive. Thank you very much.